Hello everyone, welcome back. Before starting with before continuing the lesson, do you have any questions about what we have seen so far? Yeah, if not, I will continue with the lesson. And yes, as I said before, feel free to ask questions via the chat, or also you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. Okay, so I will share my terminal. Mm, yes, so what we will learn now is we have added some files to the repository, but imagine that also you note that yesterday that when you execute a Python script, you generate a folder with some object files. Or for example, if you have a code that is written in C or Fortran, they can generate some object files and also the executable file, and you are not interested in saving that file to the repository. You are interested in saving your source code. That is a way to tell Git no to keep track or just ignore these files. Let's have an example here with the command. I can create some files, let's say in touch a.dat, touch b.dat. If I do ls, I see that I have my files that are mars.txt, venus.txt, and I have these two files, a.dat and b.dat, that are temporary files that I don't want to save them in my repository. So imagine that I modify the file. Okay, let's modify nano venus.txt and add I don't know, an update about this planet will take place in September 2021. If I save that and I write git status, I see that I have modified venus.txt, and all the time these files will show in my every time that I do a git status, the a.dat or b.dat. So what is the way to avoid that? I can create a file that is called gitignore. So to create that file is I can use nano, for instance, dot gitignore, and here I can specify a list of files that I want to ignore. So in this case, I want to ignore a.dat and b.dat. If I save that list, go with Control O, Control X, and I do again git status, I see that these files are ignored by Git. But also, well, they said that there is a file that is not tracked and is the git ignore, so I can add this file to my repository. Git add git ignore. If I do git status, I get git ignore and venus.txt. Yes, there is a question that's a good question because we haven't talked about sub directories. Yes, it is possible to ignore directories. So imagine that we can create a directory called mkdir results, for instance. If I do ls, I see that they have these temporary files and also the further results. And also I have imagine that I have a folder also called mkdir code. If I do git status, well, this case, these directories are ignored by but you can add them. I mean, I think let me. Okay, for example, the directory that we want to add is a code that we can do. We can add that directory with the git add code and okay, it's not so because I think the issue here is that the directory is empty. So let's go with the result and let's create that so we can create abc dot that df dot that for instance. Oops, I forgot touch. So I have these files. Let's do now git status. Okay, now the folder results is not ignored because the folder is not empty. So you see that you have that untracked files. So if you want to ignore results, yes, you can edit git ignore, and you can say I want to ignore this folder. Let's see if that works. If I do git status again, you see that this folder is not show anymore. And also we see that we have a complaint that we see that we have do modifications on git ignore, and the version is different to the git ignore that we have in our staging file. So what we can do is we can do git add git ignore. Also, let's do git add Venus. Well, also just to show you, you can do the commit of only one file. So if you do, if you check, I mean, git status, you see that the changes to be committed are this new file, but the modification of Venus is not in that. So just to show you how to do several commits with the different files, you can do a git commit -m add git ignore file, and then you can do git status and see that Venus is still there. So git add Venus, git commit -m update Venus nodes, for instance, and you have everything there. What else I would like to explain here? If we edit gitignore, we see that we have the files that we ignore are a.dat, v.dat, and results. We can also say ignore everything that ends with the .dat. Oops. So let's get gitignore. So I get that I ignore everything that ends with the .dat, and also I ignore the further results. So if I do a git status, well, okay, I said that git ignore hasn't been modified, but ignores the files that are .dat. Also, a thing that I didn't know before that could be interesting. Imagine that you want to ignore all .dat files except one, that is yes, results that maybe you want to save them for the future. Or so, okay, if we do ls, we see that we have a.dat and b.dat. But imagine that I want to, I generate a file called final.dat, and I want to save that file, but according to our gitignore, it will ignore this file. So how we can make an exception of a file? If we edit gitignore, we can say after that, we can put exclamation mark and say final.dat. So with that we say please ignore all files that are with that ending except final.dat. So if we do that, and now we do git status again, we see that it's not ignored anymore this file final.dat. So now we can add the file to our repository and just to make the repository clean for the next section, we will add git add gitignore git add final.dat, and I could say git commit oops -m add survey results, for instance. And I get, yes, the message that is to file change, to insertions, to deletions, etc. Okay, so we have seen how to create and work with a repository that is in our computer. But what if I want to work with another colleague and place a copy of this repository somewhere else? Also, this is important in case that your laptop or your workstation has any issue with the disk or something wrong, and it's always good to have a backup of your files. So this is a way to save the repository somewhere else. And also you can browse and make the repository public on the internet and you have a lot of new features. You can do that. Today we will see that using GitHub, but if your university could have a repository, for example, in my case, in the University of Edinburgh, we have a GitLab. Also, there is another website that is called Bitbucket. That is another place where you can upload your repositories. But in this lesson, we will learn a little bit more about GitHub. So what I will do now is I will share my web browser. See if that works. Yes, this one. Okay. Now, you see that I'm in github.com, and this is my username, Juan FRH. So what I will do is I will, well, if I click here on I will make this a little bit bigger. Well, these are the repositories that I have, some activity. Also, if I click here, well, I have like a different content. I can see my profile, repositories. I mean, you can, what I recommend you is, yeah, you can create an account and you can explore the different things that you can do with GitHub. What I'm interested in now is I will go to my repositories. Well, I have like my profile. I have like a picture bio that should update that. And we have the different repositories that in my account, but I want to create a new one. So if I click in new, I can create a new repository. I can either import a repository, I can use a repository template, but today we will create a repository from scratch. Actually, we will create a repository where we will upload all the local changes that we have done. So owner, it's me, and repository name is we will use the name planets. See that the planet's name is available. I can also introduce a description that is optional, that I could say some notes about planets. Also, the repository, if you want to make it public, so everyone on the internet can see the repository, or if the repository is still you are still like it's a work in progress, let's say, you can make it private, and once that you're happy with the contents, you can make the repository public. Also, you have different choices. You can add a README file, gitignore that we have seen already, and choose a license that, yes, we have. We will see more about that later. So I think that's okay. I will create the repository. So yes, that's my repository. Here, that's also a good feature of Git that is that you get a lot of help. So once that you create a repository, you get all of this information. For instance, this is in case that you create on the command line, Imagine that the planet is not in your laptop and you want to create it from scratch. So you will find this mm, familiar. You use git init, git add the Redmi. That this is the page that when you open this repository on the internet, is the first page that will be seen. It's like when you create a website that you use index.html, PHP, etc. So this is kind of you use redmi.md. MD start is markdown, so it's the way of giving format and write some text in in a text editor, and when the browser reads that text, could give some format depending on the uh, characters that you have used or the so and also what we will do is we will add this push an existing repository from the command line. So we can use git remote and git push. And this is what we will do now. Also, there is a difference. Well, this is mentioned here, the URL of my repository on the internet. I have two choices. I can use HTTPS, that this is the URL, and if I use that URL, I need to specify the username and password every time that I do a commit or every time that I update the repository, because I think, yes, I think there is a way to save that, but it's recommended not to save your password in the. So every time that you work with a repository, you do you need to introduce your password. There is a way to avoid that. That this is creating an SSH key that in case that the future or maybe now you have access to another machine, a supercomputer, you can sometimes it's mandatory to set this SSH key. That the SSH key, just to let you know, there are two. Is a key that is divided into two parts. You have a public part and a private part. The private part is in your laptop. It's recommended that never. I mean, should always be in your laptop, and you should never share that private part because it's yours. And it's like the way to prove that you can. It's a way of validation. So if you share the private key, someone else could do some actions on your behalf. So yes, don't do that. The private key should be in your laptop. And then you have the other part of the SSH key is public, that you can upload to the supercomputer that you want to get access, or you can upload it to your account in GitHub. In settings, you can upload and if you use this URL with that is more, this is for SSH, you don't need to introduce your username and your password. So yes, that's this is what I wanted to explain from this website. And what I will do now is I will my local repository, I will add it to the internet. So let's do that. I will share my did I? One moment. I don't know why it doesn't work. Okay, now I can see it. Yeah, perfect. Okay, now I can see. So what I want to do, I want to add the URL of my repository. So and also for in this case I will use okay, I will use HTTPS. I will get asked for the password, but well, that's fine. So the way to add that is you need to type git remote add origin. Origin is like a convention, is the name that we will use internally to refer to the remote repository. And now we need to type the URL of the. So also, well, you can copy and paste. So this is the remote. But before executing that, if I do git remote slash minus minus list, okay, this is not the option. I think it's minus L is the. Ah no, sorry, minus is minus V. I get an empty result because we don't have any. This repository is not linked with any of the with any repository on the internet. So I think I lost what I have written, but well, that's fine. I can write again git remote add origin and the URL that I will copy and paste. Now, if I do git remote minus v, I get that this repository is now linked to a repository that is on the internet. It's linked, but we still now what we need to do is to upload the repository that is on our computer to the internet. So to GitHub. So I will share with you, or let me check if. Okay, so you see that I have here. This is my laptop, and what I have now is I have in GitHub. I have a well, instead of this is the username. You should have a different username. Planets.git. So here I have a repository, but now it's empty. What I want to do is to get this repository and do a copy here. So this is what we will do now with git push. So yeah, this is the window that I wanted to. So to do that, we need to write git push where I want to push to the origin. If I origin, and the branch that I have is the branch by default is called master. So if I do that, let's see if that works. Okay, this is what I said. If I specify the HTTPS URL, I always get asked for the username, that this is Juan FRH, and the password. The password, I needed to find out which password was. So I will paste the password. Grand. So I get all of these messages that is yes, has been transferred from my laptop to the remote repository that is on GitHub. So what we have done, let me share with you this. So what we have done is we have done a git push origin. So we have copied everything that is on our laptop, well, our repository is copied here in the. Also, there is a way if because we can have different when we do git push, you know that we have a origin in this, but because we can have a different, but well, this is like a more complex. We can have a different remote repositories, and we can choose which one we update. So also there is a way that because you see in the documentation that this it could be done git push sorry, minus u origin master. Uh, if you do that, the minus u means that it means sub upstream 2. What that means is every time that you do a git push, you don't need to specify origin master. So if you do that once, the next time that you do a git push, I am say. Oh, sorry, I'm not. Sorry, I thought I was sharing the terminal. One moment. Okay, this is what I wanted to share. So as you see that I have in the documentation or in other documents, you may find git push minus u origin master. So you define the default remote repository that you will do the push. So if you do that, the next time that you do the git push, you don't need to specify origin master. Now I can see I can share my web browser and we can see if the files has been uploaded or not. To share that, okay, I will share my So I have something like that. Well, because this is not still not a refresh, but if I refresh the website, I have here the gitignore, finer, Mars, and Venus. You see that I created folders that are has been ignored, and also I can see the who committed the changes. So other service results. Also, I can see the history here. If I click in 10 commit, I can see the commit on the June 22nd, 2021. So I see that the start note on Mars, start comment about weather. If I click here, also I can add a comment, and also I can see in the interface what I have changed in this restore previous version of Mars node. I see that here I remove this line, so you can see the. And also what I wanted to explain is we can add a README file using. So we can click here, and well, this is by default. This is what I mentioned about Markdown. This is if you introduce a hash, is a way to say that the following text is a section. So you have a section planets, and well, here you have some notes about planets. You can also add a software carpentry course, for instance. June 2021. So you can edit this in this and also they tell you the choices that you have. You can commit directly to the master branch or create a new branch. What we will do today is yes, we will commit directly to the master branch. By default, it will use a create redmi.md, and this is in case that you want to add an optional extended description. But yes, let's use this, or well, we can, rather than create, use add Redmi, for instance, to change the, and you can commit the new file. And now, when you open the, well, you have this new file, and you see in your web browser or in your repository, in your online repository, you see this, that this is like the, what I mentioned, that this is like the format is now in section format, and you have here some notes about the repository. So we can see here the log on the commit that I have done 39 seconds ago. But this change, I have done this change in the remote repository. So how can I copy these changes to my local repository? It's possible using Git Pull. Let me show you how. If I share, okay, we'll share my terminal window. So if you do ls, you see that I don't have a file called redmi.md. So the way is I can do git pull. And why is complaining? Because that is not well. They give you some information. If you see, I didn't I didn't specify the remote repository, and also I didn't specify the branch. So because I haven't done that when with the minus u. Doesn't matter. What I only need to do is I can specify Git Pull origin master, and now I get the updates that are in my remote repository. Imagine that in case that okay, in this case I have done this update, but imagine that a colleague of mine has access to the repository and have updated that. So this is the way to keep my repository up to date. And now if I do ls, I can find that I have a file called redmi.md. So okay, this is about remote and having. So yeah, the idea is we have a Git push to copy changes from our local repository to the remote repository, and Git pull to do the other way around, from the remote repository to the local repository. So let me check if there are. There is a question that is how can I check that all files are going to be updated from remote before requesting a pull? When you do a Git pull, all updates that are committed to the remote repository will come to your. You don't need, in this case, you don't need to specify files because everything that is available on the remote repository will be copied into your local repository. What we will see later is when, for example, in case that you do a modification of the file, these changes can be merged. So this is not a problem. But in case that you modify the same line of the file, or there is a modification on the same line of the file, we need to solve that conflict. Do you have any other questions? If not, I will continue with the. So the repository, the remote repository that I created is I only have access. I mean there is only one person that have access to that repository is myself. But what if I want to add someone else to collaborate with that repository? I can do that if I go to my to GitHub. I think is that one, yes. So here in my remote repository, I have a well a lot of there are a lot of features. like issues. That this is when something that is an issue with the or something that could be improved. You can add this an issue on to the repository. Pull request, that is in case that some people want to update the repository, but there are not members. They can do a pull request. This is because this just the introduction. This is not covered today, but you can find more info on the internet. This is quite useful to know a little bit more about the issues on pull request. But this is a little bit more advanced. And what we will see is to add uh, a new person that is in. If I click in here in settings, we can we can do so. I see that. Mm, okay, see that there is an issue with one of the repositories. If can have and also there is another question saying that a push from a local repository will be a pull from the remote repository. Mm, uh, you can you can see, yeah, I mean you can because from your the thing is from your remote repository you don't have access to the, let's say, the remote repository is like the say golden copy of the central version of the repository. So normally the way of working is when you have your local repository, you do push to your remote repository. So you copy there the changes, and then when you want to retrieve them, you do the Git pull. Normally, the way of working is using local repositories. But it's possible to do changes straight to the remote repository, but normally it's not the way to that this is used. But well, it's good to know that feature, and of course it can be used, but it's like not let's say the let's say before GitHub was not possible to do that. So what I wanted to explain is to how to give access to other collaborators. So if when I click in settings, have a repository name, features, I have a lot of the bottom also I can delete this repository or archive, transfer ownership in case that I imagine that I create a repository but I want to give the owner rights to someone else, so I can. I mean, many choices here, but I will click in manage access. I need to confirm my password because this is like a quite, yeah, quite and uh, here I see that who has access, and they said that this is a public repository visible to anyone, and I have a direct access. Is the collaborators that I have is 0, so I can I can add collaborators. Okay, see the mistake if when you do the Git push and you are using the SSH URL, you need to define the SSH keys and upload them to your GitHub account. If you don't have SSH keys, you need to use the HTTPS URL, and you will not get this error that is permission denied public key. The way of doing that or getting the URL is if we click back here, code, here you get, this is the URL that you should use if you want to use a username and password, the HTTPS. If you use SSH, you can use this URL. So that's the difference. Okay, let's go back and explain how to add a collaborator. So settings, manage access, and I can invite a collaborator. So I can search by username, full name, or email. I can invite, if I remember I can invite one of my colleagues, William, to this repository. So I can use, I can invite him. I think it's this one, and I will add him to the repository. So I can see that I sent him the invitation, and once that he accepted my invitation, he can commit to that repository, so he can do changes to the repository. So this is good if you want to collaborate with other with other colleagues. Also, what if imagine that you are in another laptop and you want to get a copy of the remote repository? There is a command to that is called Git Clone. So we will see how it works. I will share my terminal. Okay, I need to. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit tricky to share screens. Okay. Now, imagine that. Okay, if I go cd, let's say that I delete planet. I delete the local repository because it's everything in the everything in remote. So okay, what I would advise don't do that. You can either change to another folder or to do this git clone in case that your local repository is still not uploaded. But okay, what I will do is I will remove this repository, and I will do git clone. And for example, in my case, because I have defined I have the SSH keys defined, I will show you how to. One moment that I get the URL. SSH. So in this case, I use this URL that this is for SSH keys. So if I do that, I'm cloning into planets and also you see remote numerating objects, receiving objects, etc. If I do cd planets, I get what you see now is that I get a fresh copy of the repository, of the remote repository, and the temporary files that I had before are not any longer in there because are not committed to the remote repository. Also, I can see if I do git remote -v, I see the automatically when I do a git clone, I get this, and I get this set up by default. Let me check if there are any questions. Fine. So it's okay. So see that the issues are solved. Okay. So what I would like to explain now is this is like a last part. Are the conflicts. So what is a conflict? Let's normally what we do is like we do pairs, and you can push and do and work with that. But okay, we'll see this together. The way of creating a conflict is I will do a change in my local repository, and also I will do a change in my remote repository. I will change the same line. So I will you will see what is the error. Okay, let's edit in my local repository, nano Redmi. For instance, I will add the day to the. So I will do today's Tuesday, 22nd of June of 2021. Control O, Control X, and what I will do is I will do git git status to see how it looks like. See that I have modified redmi.md. So what I can do is I can do a git commit -a. Let's specify the message -m, add the date. So now these changes are committed to my local repository. What if I want to update, upload these changes to the remote repository? Okay, I will wait, because what I will do is I will modify now the remote repository. I mean, I will create a conflict. You can see how to solve this conflict. Because in with the GitHub you can modify files in here. If you click here in edit, I can no, I can write the date in a different format. I can use 22/06 2021. Or imagine that a colleague of, for example, William, uh, uh, updates this date to that format. We'll say update date, and I will commit directly to the master branch. So now the remote repository show this date. What if I want now to commit a change from my local repository to this repository? Let's see how. Okay, give me 1 second to do that. Okay. So if I do now a git push to commit my changes, I get this. Well, I get that the changes are rejected, and I get an error. Fail to push some reference to this. I get also some hints, some help that they said that the updates were rejected because the remote contains work that you do not have locally. So normally, before updating your changes, it's recommended to do a Git pull to retrieve the changes that you have done on your the changes that may exist in the remote repository. So to do that, okay, we do a Git pull. Oops, that is we get this message. I mean, it's fine, it works, but we get the message saying auto merging Redmi, and because we edit the same line, normally GitHub, if we edit different lines, it merges the changes. Nothing happens. That's fine. But when it's the same line, Git doesn't know which line you want to keep or which line you want to ignore, or if you want to have another version of the line. So I will, okay, let's edit, let's see what this looks like a conflict. So if I do, if I open Redmi, I find something like that. I find this is the beginning of the conflict, this line here. This is the line that I have locally in my repository, and I have here a separator. This is the line that I have in the remote repository. Well, this is like the end of the conflict. So how can I solve that? I want to keep my line of the repository. So what I do is I delete the rest of the lines, and I keep this like that. And now I save my file. Okay, I'm using Vim with a WQ. Also, to delete the file, since you press twice the key D, let's delete it. So if I do cat readme, I see that I solved the conflict, And also if I do git status, I see that Redmi has been modified. So what I will do is I will git add Redmi, also git commit -m. I will say conflict solve, for instance. And now I can do a git push. And now it works because I have that is, yeah, the command to update the command to update the repository from the remote repository. I mean, to update your local repository with the changes that are in the remote repository is a Git pull. Using that, you get all changes that have been done, if any, from the remote repository. So this is the way to solve conflicts. Do you want to see, for instance, how Git merge the files in case that we do different, if we modify different lines? Okay, let's do this quickly. I'm not sure if there are further questions. There is a question that is yeah, you can git fetch to see the yes. There is a question that is if I want to check if I have differences between my local and remote repository. Yes, you can use git fetch to see that. What I will do is I will do a merge, but changing different lines of the repository and sorry, different lines of the same file, and you will see that Git do a merge and yeah, it works. So, okay, I will quickly, oops, what is, okay, sorry. I will, what I will do is in my remote repository, I'm not sharing the screen, but I will I will edit the, okay, what I will do is this. No, Redmi. In my remote repository, I will change the first line that you will not see the changes. Commit changes. Okay. And here in my local repository, what I will do is I will change this second line. Some notes about planets investigated during my research in 2020, for instance. So let's save here the changes. And now I will do a git commit -a -m the update Redmi. And now I want to do git push. And again, I will get an error that the remote repository is already updated. So if I do git, let's try git fetch. Okay, actually git fetch is doing something different. Let me check. Doesn't merge. I mean the thing. Okay, let's do a git pull. Okay, in this case it doesn't work because I think I have done before git merge. Sorry, git fetch. Not sure about. Okay, git status. Oh, I see that the redmi.md is. Okay, so the way of. Yeah, I don't know why that hasn't changed the. I mean, for instance, here I see that there are we have the line 1 and 2 are different in both files. So if I want to keep, for example, the line, I want to keep this line that is from the remote repository, and I want to keep that line that is from my local repository. So I can do that. But I will do that with the nano. Theory should be merged, but I'm not sure if because I did. But well, let's solve the conflict. So I want to keep this. Let me show. I'm not sure if that can be copied here. Okay. Oh well, okay. I need here to delete it like manually. Okay, so this is the final version that I want to keep in my. I will leave also a space here. So if I do Control O, Control X, and now I do the git git push. Why is it complaining that I need to do a. Okay, because I didn't add. Sorry, if I do a git, I forgot to. I solved the conflict, but I didn't add the conflict to the. So I git add Redmi and git commit -m conflict solve. and I can do a git push. So I think the error here is because I try to modify. Normally it works with the larger files when you modify different parts of the file, but because here I modified line 1 and line 2, I think that Git got confused and thought that was the same. I think yes, I didn't use the right sample to do that. But you can try this at home and see how it works to merge different versions. Also, it's good if you have someone else to play with, and you can commit several versions and see mm, how it works. Let me check. So also the lesson here is the learn lesson here is to before pushing changes to the repository, you need to do a git pull in order to see if there are changes or not. And if there are changes, if you are lucky, these changes are merged in your local repository, and you can do a git push, and could be conflict, and then you need to edit to work with this conflict. Mm, okay, the last part of the lesson is a little bit about is more a theory that talks about open science, that is that you can when you submit is a good practice when you submit something to something, I mean a paper or an article to a journal or a conference. You can give a link to the repository where the code, the source code is, for instance, or in case that you work with some data, you can give the link to use Zenodo or Fixer, that you upload the data that you are work with, and this website can give you a DOI, a digital object identifier, that you can use. You can add that URL to the paper, and you make the research open science. Well, also it's open science is if the journal is open science. I mean, it's open to the public, because there are some journals that you need to pay to get access. You can access to this. You can access to this. Sometimes the university pays the fee to get access to these journals, but maybe some universities don't have the license. That's why now at the universities are recommended to everything that you publish that you publish in open access. Also, the lesson talks a little bit about licensing. This is good if you write some material or some code you can add a file called license to your repository. What I can do is I can share. I can share my screen and you can see what I'm talking about. So here talks a little bit about open science that you can read about it later. Also about licensing, you can have a license file where you can specify the license that you can use Creative Commons, or that is the MIT license. You have the different license in terms that if you want to, if what you share in your repository could be reused, or also if it's needed to give credit to the code that if the code is reused, you need to give credit if could be reused for commercial purposes or not. There are many different license types that you can use. There is a license, for instance, that is called General Public License (GPL). That if you use a code that is a GPL into your code should be GPL as well. So this is, for example, a thing that you should be careful with this. Well, be careful. It's because of this license that if you use something that is a GPL, your code should be a GPL as well. So, for example, this is a feature of this license. So it depends on the. Also citation. Imagine that your code relates to a publication that is a journal or in a conference. You can add a file called citation, and you can say to reference this that please use this. So you can add these instructions to your repository. Also hosting, this is what we have talked before, that we have different, we can use GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Also, there are could be some institutional repositories, but you should check if people outside the institution can get access or not. If you are sharing the repository to your research group, you don't need to search that for public. That's fine. You can use your local repository. Sorry, your institution repository, remote repository. But in case that you want to make it public, you may need to use another repository like GitHub or Bitbucket or any other. Also, here there is that I think it solves a question that was asked because there is a question in the chat saying that if you can add a DOI from a GitHub repository. This is if when you have your repository, GitHub repository, you can create a release. Release is like, okay, this is the, let's say, a snapshot of your code. And with that release, you can go to Zenodo, for instance, and you can get a new URL or a DOI, a digital object identifier. That is, you can use that for your paper. So I think this is the last part of the. Well, this is there is also some documentation in case that you want to use Git from RStudio. depending on what you are using RStudio, Eclipse. What else? There are other editors that they have a Git include by default, so you can make use of that instead of using the terminal. You can use the editor, that for example Eclipse or RStudio. So that's with the the lesson on Git. Yes, there is a suggestion in the chat that people from the for that, what I would recommend. Give me 1 second. I would recommend using please use the shared document that we have. So I will share the link is in the course page, but I will share here in this. So please, if this afternoon you want to play with someone else, what you have learned about Git, you can communicate here in the using the Etherpad. And you can contact with your with other course delegates. So well, before, yeah, it's like 3 minutes left. Do you have any last questions? If this afternoon you have any questions, also please you can use the share pad, and I can have a look and answer them. If not today, tomorrow, if that's okay. Okay, if not, yes, thanks for attending today, and tomorrow we will see Python at 9:30. Have a nice rest of the day and speak to you soon. Bye.